Good morning. Yes, that's a piano, and I'm up here to talk about teacher preparation. It could be a guitar, it could be a violin, a cello. I'm sure all of you have had the same experience I had, but for me, it was a piano. I remember very well that first music lesson. I was almost 6, went in and sat down beside Miss Sarah on the piano bench, and I learned, now we start with lesson 1, making music is such fun. 3 notes, 2 fingers on each hand, but when I went home, I knew how to play the piano. I went on, it took a long time. I never got to be very good, but I eventually learned to play with both hands at the same time, keep time with the metronome, use the pedals, actually read music. You'll never hear me play, but I could play passably. It was a pretty complex process, and it took a long time for me to be able to play passably. I bet a lot of you have had a similar experience in learning to play a musical instrument. We could parallel that with learning to read. All of us in this room, I'm pretty sure, learn to read first by listening to someone read to us. And you probably had a favorite book that somebody read to you so many times, you had it memorized. And you believed when you turned the pages of that book that you could read. And then you went on to learn the letters and the sounds that were associated with those letters. Somebody taught you to put all that together and recognize words and use those words that had been spoken to you that you had heard and learned to understand. And you eventually learned to make meaning out of all of that in print on paper so that you could actually now read complex technical manuals. You can read novels for pleasure. You can read the IRS directions if you have to, or the official code annotated of Georgia, right? It's a pretty complicated process for something that we all do every day, almost some of us constantly all day, every day, all of us repeatedly during the day, and we almost never think about it now. But think about what a complex learning process it was. Let's think about if learning to read is so complex, how much more complex it must be to teach someone to read. Teachers of reading can be compared, if learning to read is like learning to play an instrument, teaching someone to read, to me, could be compared to conducting the symphony. That teacher has to have all of those skills, all of those abilities, and be able to convey and develop those in our youngsters that are learning to read. They have to be able to do that well. And on top of that, they have to be able to do it with a classroom full of youngsters, all at different levels, learning at different speeds, in different places in that continuum and progression of learning to read. In fact, they're conducting multiple symphonies. So teacher preparation is truly a very serious and complicated business. What does that mean that we need to do in order to be able to reach our goal of having all of our students reading well? For one thing, we need to start with our very earliest teachers of reading. You've already heard this morning from Dr. Fitzgerald about language nutrition. We need to make available to our parents and our early caregivers the very best resources and strategies, and we need to communicate with them well so that they know where to find those and can access them and use them. But we also need to provide support for our classroom teachers. We need to make sure they also can access all the resources and strategies that are needed so that they can take what is learned in listening and speaking and develop and weave that into a pattern of action and interpretation that becomes reading for meaning, the true purpose of what we want to accomplish. Those teachers have to make sure those students can hear those sounds, recognize those phonemes, that they can associate those with the letters and groups of letters that represent those sounds. They're learning phonics. They learn to put all those sounds together and those representations together so that they're developing vocabulary. They learn to use that vocabulary, and they learn to recognize that vocabulary in a way that's very fluent so that they're not stumbling over words as they read and can truly develop facility and comprehension, the ultimate purpose of reading. So, teacher preparation being so complicated, are we doing a very good job of it? In 2010, the National Institute of Educational Sciences conducted a survey, not in Georgia, with a large number of teacher preparation candidates as they finished their learning experiences. They were asked if they thought they were well prepared to teach reading. And depending on the different component about which they were asked, between 80 and 95% of those teachers said that they believed they had learned how to teach reading, that they knew what needed to be done in order to go in that classroom and help those students be successful. But they turned right around and asked those same teacher candidates basic knowledge questions on those same components. They were only able to get 57% of those responses correct. So there was a huge discrepancy between what they thought they knew and understood and what they were really did know and understand. And I would be willing to wager, based on my own experience as a beginning teacher, where I spent several years having finished a very prestigious education preparation program. I spent several years teaching myself to teach reading when I was actually in the classroom with real students. I would bet that they were not 57% proficient on actually teaching students to read in a hands-on, practical kind of way. So what does that mean we need to do? If we're going to develop teachers who are virtuoso conductors of reading symphonies, what do we need to do? The ultimate measure of our success is whether or not our students can read well. Ariane has already told you this morning that the NAEP results do not show that we have a great track record in having students ready to read by the end of third grade. Only 32% really proficient by the end of 8th grade. We really need to provide a system of professional accountability and support for our teachers. We've made a lot of strides in the last few years on the accountability piece. We have measures in place like the Georgia Milestones have really been rolled out in the last year. They're going to set a new level of expectations for our students' learning. We have measures like the Teacher Effectiveness Measure and the Teacher Preparation Program Effectiveness Measure and the CCRPI for school performance. We've implemented all those. We have begun to develop those systems of support. We have a great partnership across this state in providing extensive teacher induction once teachers have graduated and are beginning to practice in the classrooms. We have initiatives like the Striving Readers program at the Department of Education, the language and literacy coaches in our office from our office at the Georgia Office of Student Achievement. We have something you're going to learn about later this afternoon in the works, the literacy launchpad that's going to provide resources for language development. But there's even more that we need to do. We need to develop the policies and strategies and put those into place that will help us to recruit the very best and brightest young people in Georgia to the teaching field, especially the early childhood education field where this reading teaching is so critical. We need to expand the field experiences that our teachers have in their preparation programs so that they have real hands-on opportunity to test themselves and see if they really know what they think they know. And can they apply that and really help students successfully learn to read? And we need to identify the very strongest reading teachers already in our schools and classrooms, and we need to provide them with the training and support and time to mentor those developing teachers. So, today, you have a very unique opportunity. You have time today to listen, to learn, to engage, to reflect, and to commit. There is much yet to be done in this pillar to make sure that we provide the appropriate preparation, but also the appropriate ongoing support to all of our teachers of reading in Georgia, from our parents to our caregivers in daycare, to our pre-K teachers, kindergarten, and on up through the classrooms. My question for you today is, what will you commit to do to help us support teachers in preparation to effectiveness. Thank you.